Thank you. It's a joy to be among people who genuinely care about the welfare of horses. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, my fellow panel members. I'd like to extend a personal thanks to Patrick Betuello. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here, and to express my gratitude to Patrick for his tireless work in keeping track of and remembering fallen racehorses on the only website that I am aware that does such horse racing wrongs. Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself. I have spent the better part of my life in the company of Thoroughbreds. From the time I saw Canonero win the Kentucky Derby in 1971, I was about 3.5, I'm dating myself, I was smitten. I absolutely fell in love with Thoroughbreds, and since childhood I have been involved with every aspect of caring for them, from mucking stalls to foaling to the winner's circle and everything in between. For many years, I showed off-the-track Thoroughbreds before they became popularized as OTTBs. These 3 horses are all Thoroughbreds that came off the track that I personally spent many years showing, and they taught me things that I'm still trying to learn and figure out today. I galloped racehorses at Saratoga for Todd Pletcher and Bill Mott, and retrained Thoroughbreds for use in different disciplines. And I operated a breeding, boarding, and training facility through 2011. In that time, I too have said goodbye to many beloved equine friends who took their last breath in my arms, horses that otherwise would have been sent to a slaughterhouse. For a time, I believed that I could make a difference in the racing world by doing right by my horses. I believed that by raising big, bold, sound New York breds who could handle the demands of racing without drugs, that I would have a competitive edge. I quickly learned that no matter how perfect the colt or filly that I delivered to the racetrack, once that horse was out of my hands, I was at the mercy of trainers and veterinarians who did not care for that horse in the same way I did. Having lived with horses and understanding their willingness to try, their resilience and their loyalty, it never ever occurred to me that anyone would compromise the health, soundness, and well-being of the animals upon which they make their living. In 2.5 weeks from this evening, all eyes will be focused on 20 coveted Thoroughbreds prancing to the tune of my old Kentucky home on the first Saturday in May, as they ready themselves to deliver to the public the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. Exciting, maybe, for those who haven't been exposed to the reality of what it takes to get a horse to the Derby. Exciting for those who have no idea that in the same year, 23,130 other Thoroughbreds were registered. And exciting, maybe, for those who have no idea that approximately 20,000 Thoroughbreds per year are butchered for human consumption, including the 1986 Kentucky Derby winner, Ferdinand. Talking heads will spotlight celebrities, interview top trainers, glamorize wealthy owners, and gush over the pageantry on parade. Featured reports will be edited to show the world just how much these men and women truly care for their racehorses. For a brief time, I too was complicit in promoting racing and ownership through Unbridled TV, which I started on the backstretch of Saratoga, interviewing all the top trainers, and with Unbridled Racing partnerships. I was both determined and naive. In March of this year, PETA exposed the world to a different view of equine life at the racetrack. A 9-minute video released through the New York Times shocked viewers with a collage of cruel and abusive practices forced upon thoroughbreds. I was not surprised. In 2011, while investigating the breakdown of my own horse, Bourbon Bandit, I learned the ugly truth all on my own. I discovered firsthand that the excessive and illegal use of drugs to keep injured horses racing was pervasive and mainstream, where human athletes are disparaged and sometimes publicly destroyed by doping. Racehorses are restrained and forced to be drugged. The New York Times ran my findings as a lead-in on page 1 in September 2012. The racing industry's reaction to PETA's expose is shameless. Participants claim a highly edited, out-of-context portrayal and have chosen to launch an attack on the messenger rather than outing abusers from their own industry. I can tell you, as an insider of 30 years, PETA's video reveals the absolute truth as to what happens day in and day out on the backstretches of America. Maimed and crippled horses are drugged by racetrack veterinarians who enable them to race until they die on the track or simply disappear behind the scenes. Win or lose, the majority are packed onto crude livestock trailers without their pain medication, without food, without water, never to be seen again. It has long been thought that drug abuse in thoroughbred racing only takes place at the lowest levels. PETA's video featured the biggest names in the sport, among them champion trainer Steve Asmussen. After its release, Asmussen's 2014 Hall of Fame nomination was tabled. Prior to its release, the 16-member nominating committee of the Racing Hall of Fame glossed over his 75 doping violations. How desperate is the Racing Hall of Fame to proudly nominate such an abuser to sit among its stars? 75 doping violations he had already accrued before being nominated by 16 knowledgeable members of the horse racing community. Already inducted Hall of Fame jockey Gary Stevens and D. Wayne Lucas, a trainer who has won a record 14 Triple Crown races, joked over the illegal use of electric battery shockers, small tasers, used to terrify horses into running harder. Lucas likened the buzzing sound to that of a full-blown orchestra, stating everybody had one. These men have made millions of dollars on horses, and they found humor in having tortured them to run faster or break down trying. Neither Lucas or Stevens has offered an expression of any remorse for the pain and suffering they caused horses they willfully abused. And interestingly, in 2013, Lucas won the $1 Million Travelers at Saratoga with Will Take Charge. After the victory, accusations came out that his jockey used a buzzer. The New York Gaming Commission investigated. The report did not mention Lucas's history with buzzers, and no penalty followed. PETA's video also caught New York's go-to veterinarian, Dr. James C. Hunt, Jr., jamming a syringe of Lasix into the jugular vein of a frightened and highly restrained horse. The horse had no say in the matter. With the bloody needle still in hand, Hunt admitted, "They probably don't need it. It's a performance enhancer." The World Anti-Doping Agency has banned the use of Lasix in all human sports due to its alleged use as a masking agent for other drugs. In horse racing, Lasix is prescribed to stop bleeding, a condition that less than 5% of thoroughbreds actually have. However, it is readily used on 95% who don't need it. All in all, PETA's video captures multiple violations of racing rules and anti-cruelty statutes that occur every day on the back stretches of American racetracks. Unrepentant racing industry participants boast nothing has been done illegally. However, the act of drugging a lame horse for the sake of racing does violate anti-cruelty statute in New York. Behind NYRA gates, this is business as usual. In the real world, it is a crime. No racing venue offers any incentive to do right by the horse or to race clean. I have seen countless lame and maimed horses allowed to gallop in the morning and stand in pain in their stalls in the afternoon, when trainers, caregivers, and officials simply look the other way. The lack of enforcement against cheaters encourages trainers and vets to find new drugs of choice. On Derby Day, cameras will swoon around leading trainers Todd Pletcher and Bob Baffert, with 7 of the 20 entrants between them. Pletcher's liberal use of legal drugs was exposed when Coronado Heights veterinary records revealed 17 pre-race injections in the week before his death at Aqueduct Racetrack. Pletcher stated that those 17 injections are his standard pre-race protocol. I wonder if his 4 Derby entrants will each receive 17 injections the week before the Derby. Coronado Heights experienced pain and cartilage damage from a degenerative joint disease. It was also documented that he received 13 other injections in the month before his fatal race. Bob Baffert lays claim to the highest death rate and highest percentage of horses on the vets list that we know of in the country. So whether it's Derby Day or the evening sports report recapping an afternoon at the races, what is shown to the public is a lie. The pictures of racing presented in the media does not include the crippled horses who run on painkillers until their legs collapse, or the thousands who are shipped away to slaughter and butchered before they have even reached a quarter of their natural lifespan. And you sure as hell won't hear that every bet you place on a horse continues to fund this heinous cycle of abuse in the sport of kings. In the case of my horse, Bourbon Bandit, without my knowledge or consent, 9 racing rules and anti-cruelty statutes were violated by his trainer, Bruce Levine, and several state statutes governing the licensing of equine practitioners were violated by his veterinarians, Dr. James C. Hunt, Jr. of the PETA video, and Dr. Gregory C. Bennett. These violations contained actionable crimes carrying jail time and over $250,000 in fines. Despite presenting invoices and signed veterinary records verifying repeated illegal administration of drugs to both the New York Gaming Commission and the Department of Education, along with proof of a non-licensed individual practicing veterinary medicine and the administration of excessive dosages of clenbuterol without a diagnosis, the Gaming Commission saw fit only to admonish the offenders. Perhaps it is because they are all longtime friends. To date, the Department of Education, responsible for licensing veterinarians in New York, has not taken any action, but I am told they have an ongoing investigation. It took 6 months of repeated phone calls and emails to get the New York Gaming Commission's head investigator, Joel Levison, to simply list Bandit on New York's injury database. With this protocol, I wonder how many other injuries go unreported. I have been told by a New York racing official, the more trainers and/or veterinarians are sanctioned, the worse it looks for the sport. And we need these horses to run, to fill races, even though the New York Gaming Commission's publicly stated mission is to promote the health and safety of horses and all participants in racing. Had Bandit's trainer been truthful, Bandit would have had another 20 years of useful life ahead of him. Dr. Bennett suggested euthanasia. I chose to bring Bandit home at my expense. He recovered over the course of 10 months and is now a pleasure horse. Bandit's story is an example of why tens of thousands of thoroughbreds across this country are shipped to slaughter. The majority of thoroughbreds coming off the track are injured to the point of requiring several months' recovery in a stall, usually at a minimum rate of $600 a month for board, and often ongoing veterinary care, which can equal the same. Even once recovered, these horses are often then rejected by veterinarians who conduct a pre-purchase exam for the use of these horses in other disciplines. It is not only thoroughbreds coming off the track that are at risk. It is broodmares who are past their prime, stallions who didn't live up to expectations, and the many unregistered thoroughbreds whose owners lost heart or money before registering the foal they chose to bring into this world. Since the release of PETA's video, the Jockey Club, the governing body of horse racing and the sole registrar of thoroughbreds since 1894, has weighed in on the national dialogue. Ogden Mills Phipps, also known as Dinny at Saratoga, is calling for transparency specific to veterinary records. Well, for 3 decades at the helm, he has silently allowed the degradation of the breed through the promiscuous use of drugs. Now, to save face, he calls for changes. Changes that do nothing to improve the care and well-being of each and every thoroughbred in a stall at a racetrack. The recently formed Water, Hay, and Oats Alliance is using racing's most recent scandal to look like the good guys in racing. This group is among the most wealthy of all horse owners throughout history. They, along with the Jockey Club, have had the power and influence to make changes for decades. They have not. More regulations will not serve to reveal the secrets that keep unsound horses afoot. No one but the administering veterinarian will ever know what is really in a vial that is injected into a horse's vein. Devoid of ethics, racetrack veterinarians' records often do not reflect what was actually injected into that horse, or it was sent to wash with Lasix. If leaders in the industry truly wanted change, they would have, at the very least, consistently enforced the existing rules and regulations. Sadly, thoroughbreds are nothing more than pawns in a big global money game. Horse racing is not an economically viable model. It is a tax write-off, it is a sport, it is a game for those who can afford it. At present, it cannot exist without subsidies, incentives, and federal tax benefits. Horses housed at the racetrack cost an owner approximately $100 per day, or $3,000 per month. If that horse is not earning its keep, it is an expense. And for most owners, their only concern is to eradicate that expense. Most owners are not hands-on and do not have a connection with the horse other than how that horse makes them feel when that horse is on the racetrack. New York State is incentivizing breeding, and in doing so, producing horse meat. Pro-horse racing factions have united to make a case for the huge economic impact horses make in New York State as job creators. But they do not address in any realistic fashion the overbreeding or the maintenance of those animals who naturally live another 25 years or more past retirement from their racing career. Since 1989, 25 years ago, 815,904 thoroughbreds have been registered with the Jockey Club. How many are alive today? We do not know. The Jockey Club does not require any formal or official reporting of the death of a thoroughbred it has registered. If their concern is real for thoroughbreds and sincere, wouldn't it be mandatory that every thoroughbred is microchipped and tracked? On average, a non-racing thoroughbred will cost approximately $600 to $700 a month to maintain. That's $8,400 a year, barring any major medical incidences. The simplest math speaks. To maintain 20,000 non-racing thoroughbreds a year equals $168 million per year. There is no program, no rescue, and no economic package that is big enough to sustain the number of horses being bred. As I see it, after a lifetime in the business, there is no answer to stop thoroughbreds from going to slaughter unless there is a significant reduction in the number of horses being bred. Anything less than that is propaganda and a Band-Aid to cover up the fact that it is impossible to fund and sustain a quality of life for the numbers of thoroughbreds being produced. Overbreeding is the source of the problem that the thoroughbred industry refuses to speak up on and address head-on. Until incentivizing breeding is stopped and tax incentives for doing so repealed, the majority of thoroughbreds purposefully bred and brought into this world for racing will end up in kill pens. And friends, no horse deserves that end. Thank you for your time. Next up is Dr. Lester Friedlander.